Alex, there's a specific kind of silence that only happens when you're standing on top of a house at 6 o'clock a.m. It's just you, the squirrels wondering why you're invading their territory, and the realization that the only thing between your living room carpet and a catastrophic rainstorm is a few millimeters of stone coated petroleum.
Well, that and your ability to not fall off. I've seen you on a 412 pitch, Tiger. You look like a nervous mountain goat trying to remember if it left the oven on.
Hey, a 412 pitch is the polite suggestion of slopes. It's steep enough to make your calves burn, but flat enough to make you overconfident. And overconfidence is usually when you start treating a bundle of shingles like a lounge chair, only to realize gravity has no sense of humor. I remember my first solo repair. I spent more time chasing my hammer as it slid toward the gutter than I did actually hammering. It's a humbling place to earn a living.
It's funny you mention the gutters because I think most people think a roof is just shingles. You lay them down like scales on a fish and call it a day. But I was looking at that mess of flashing and metal strips you brought in. It's way more architectural than people give it credit for.
It's a system, not a surface. If you just slap shingles on plywood, you're basically building a giant sponge. People get confused between gutter apron and drip edge constantly. They see a piece of bent aluminum and think, yeah, that's the shiny bit for the edge. But they have jobs, Alex. Specific, non-negotiable jobs.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm a homeowner who just found a mysterious puddle in the pantry. What is the order of operations? Because I know you have a very particular way the layers have to dance together.
It's a cake, basically. A very gritty, waterproof cake. And if you put the icing on before the bake, you're in trouble. The base is your plywood deck. First thing you touch isn't the shingles, it's the gutter apron. That goes on the bottom edge, the eaves. It's got that wide face that drops down into the gutter.
Wait, I've seen people use drip edge there. Is that a call the police level mistake or just a you'll regret this in 5 years mistake?
It's more of a you're making life miserable for the gutter guy mistake. Drip edge has that little outward hemlock, a little kick at the bottom. If you put that on the eaves, the gutter can't tuck up behind it properly. You end up with water trickling behind the gutter, rotting out your fascia board until the whole thing sags like an old clothesline. The gutter apron is flat-faced. It guides the water into the bucket, no detours allowed.
So gutter apron first. Then what? I assume the giant rolls of sticky stuff come out next?
Exactly. The ice and water shield. This is the stuff that separates the pros from the I saw a guy do this once crowd. It's a redundant membrane. You roll it right over that metal apron. The goal is that if water somehow sneaks under your shingles, maybe a heavy ice dam in the winter, it hits that rubberized layer and just gives up.
It just gives up. You make it sound like the water has a personality.
Oh, water is the most persistent trespasser on the planet. It's looking for a microscopic crack 24 hours a day. It doesn't sleep, Alex. So you lay that shield, then your synthetic felt or underlayment over the rest of the deck. But here's the trick. The pro's hand, if you will. Once that felt is down, then you go back and put your drip edge on the gables, the slanted sides of the roof.
Hang on. Why the switch? Why wouldn't you put all the metal on first?
Because gravity only works in one direction. On the bottom eave, you want the water to go shingle, shield, metal, gutter. But on the sides, the gable ends, you want that drip edge on top of the felt. That way, if rain is blowing sideways, it hits the metal and stays on top of the system rather than wicking underneath the felt paper. It's all about the shingle lap logic. You're building a staircase for the water to walk down. If you trip it up with a poorly placed seam, it's going to find its way into your attic.
I love that you call it shingle lap logic. It sounds like a folk band. But let's talk about the shingles themselves. I've watched guys fly through these with nail guns. It looks like they're playing a rhythm game. Is there an actual science to where the nail goes, or is more is better?
More is definitely not better if you put them in the wrong spot. Every shingle has a nail line, a narrow strip, where the material is strongest and where it overlaps the course below it. If you nail too high, you're only catching one layer and a stiff breeze will peel your roof off like an orange. If you nail too low, you're exposing the nail head to the elements and that nail will rust out and become a tiny intentional leak in about 3 seasons.
So it's a game of inches.
Fractions of inches. And don't get me started on the staggering. If you line up your seams where 2 shingles meet vertically, you've basically built a flume for water. You have to offset those joints. I usually like a 6-inch stagger. It creates a labyrinth that water isn't smart enough to navigate.
You're describing water like it's a confused mouse in a maze. But honestly, for someone listening who's looking at a small leak, maybe a brown spot on the ceiling, Is a repair actually possible, or is that just a band-aid on a gunshot wound?
It depends on the why. If your shingles are 20 years old and they're shedding granules like a dog in summer, a repair is just a stay of execution. But if a limb fell and poked a hole or a piece of flashing pulled loose, absolutely. The hardest part of a repair isn't the new shingle. It's not breaking the old ones while you're trying to get them to let go. You have to become a bit of a surgeon with a flat bar. Those shingles are stuck together with a tar strip that, on a hot day, is stickier than a toddler with a lollipop. You have to gently, very gently, slide that bar under to break the seal without tearing the shingle above it. If you're too aggressive, you'll end up replacing one shingle, then the two next to it, then the four above those, until you've accidentally re-roofed half the house.
I've seen you do that taming the tar dance. You usually look like you're trying to defuse a bomb.
It feels like it, especially in the cold. Shingles get brittle when the temperature drops. If you try to bend an old shingle to get a nail under it in October, it'll snap like a cracker. I usually tell folks, if you're doing a DIY repair, wait for a day that's about 60 degrees. Not so hot that you're melting into the deck, but warm enough that the materials have a little give to them.
Okay, let's talk about the shop disaster of the week. I know you've been holding one back. Something involving a chimney and maybe a very surprised homeowner?
Oh, the Macumber chimney. This was years ago. I was convinced I could reflash this massive brick chimney without stripping back enough shingles. I thought I was being efficient. Efficiency is usually just a fancy word for I'm about to do this twice.
Here we go.
I had the old lead flashing out, and I was trying to tuck the new step flashing in. I didn't realize the original mason had used about 4 gallons of roofing cement. We call it black gold or tar mastic, behind the brick. It was a hot July day. As I pulled the old metal, a literal river of semi-liquid tar started oozing out like lava. It got on my boots, my pants, and then, of course, I stepped on the homeowner's pristine white vinyl siding while trying to get down the ladder.
No, not the white siding.
It looked like a Dalmatian had spent the day rubbing against his house. I spent 4 hours with a bottle of mineral spirits and a rag, scrubbing that siding by moonlight while the homeowner watched me through the window sipping lemonade. He didn't say a word, just watched. That was the longest 4 hours of my life.
The silent judgment is the worst tool in any kit.
It cuts deeper than a saw blade, Alex, but it taught me never skimp on the prep. If I just laid down some drop cloths and taken the time to strip the shingles back properly, I wouldn't have been playing clean the siding at 9 o'clock p.m.
So, if someone is standing in the aisle at the big box store, staring at rows of felt synthetic underlayment and different types of metal edges, what's the one thing they should keep in mind to keep their head above water? Literally.
Don't fight the water's path. People think they can outsmart rain with extra caulk or by doubling up on shingles in a weird way. You can't. You have to respect the overlap. If you're ever unsure, just think, if I were a raindrop, where would I go? If there's a ledge for you to sit on or a gap to crawl into, you're going to do it.
Build a staircase, not a wall.
Exactly. A roof is a series of handshakes between materials. The metal shakes hands with the underlayment shakes hands with the shingles, and they all work together to move the mess off your house. If one person misses the grip, everyone gets wet.
That's a surprisingly poetic way to describe a bunch of tar and gravel.
Well, when you've spent as much time on a ridge cap as I have, you start seeing the philosophy in the grit. It's about protection. There's a real satisfaction in finishing a ridge, climbing down that ladder, and looking up, knowing that families are going to sleep dry under your work for the next 30 years. It's one of the few things we build that has to be perfect every single second of the day.
Even when it's 2 a.m. and pouring.
Especially then. That's when the roof earns its paycheck.
Well, I think I'm officially terrified and inspired to check my own gutters this weekend.
Just maybe leave the white pants inside when you do.
Noted. Thanks for the breakdown, Tiger.
Anytime. Just remember, keep your seams staggered and your feet planted. See you in the shop.